Hi, I'm Christine Cushing and welcome to another helping of my favorite foods. Today I'm going to share with you a technique and a recipe so special that the chef who created it built an entire empire all around it. He is Michelin star chef Gualtiero Marchesi and the dish is Golden Risotto. The Golden Risotto is such a special recipe. It has 3 parts. I'm going to start with part 1 by chopping a shallot, and I have so many interesting things to tell you about this recipe. It's crazy. So I'm starting, and I'm going to bring out my big-time culinary skills here, and I want to inspire you to do the same thing. A brunoise. So I want to chop it super finely. Phase 1, or part 1 of this risotto. A little bit of butter going in. So once that butter melts, just going to add the shallot. This is going to take about 5 minutes, and here it's all about precision, so I want to make sure I do it exactly how I'm supposed to. I want to tell you how I came across this recipe, and it's really amazing for me. When I was shooting my show, Confucius Was a Foodie, we went to this amazing culinary institute called Alma in Parma, Italy. And I was privileged to actually learn this recipe with the instructor chef there, and I was blown away. I mean, it contradicted everything I've ever learned about making risotto. And I think I asked the chef while we were making it at least 3 times, I've never seen risotto made like this. Is this how you've always made it? And you'll see as I'm making it why I keep asking that question, why I was asking it. So essentially here in phase 1 is we're going to be making what's called an acidulated butter. So once that shallot gets soft enough, I'm going to be adding a few other interesting ingredients. Chef Marchesi was the first chef in Italy to have 3 Michelin stars. And he thought that Italian cuisine was just a little bit too rustic. So he wanted to kind of kick it up a notch. So he's sort of known as the father of modern Italian cuisine. That's where this recipe hails from. Okay, let me see what's happening here. I just want to sweat this onion, this shallot. Now that it's a little bit soft, we're going to start that first layer of acidulation, okay? So what he did, a little bit of white wine vinegar going in, and then a little bit of white wine going in. So every chef, I guess, has that signature dish, and for Chef Marchesi to say that this was his signature dish is an understatement, actually. This was the dish, the Golden Risotto it was called, that gave him his first Michelin star. And he literally built an empire around it. Now, as we put the dish together, you'll see what makes it so special. There's just one little ingredient that I don't have. It's the gold. Literally, he had a gold leaf put on top of it. And when I went to Alma, the chef made it for me there with the gold leaf. I mean, it's crazy over the top, but in a sense, simple yet complex, if that makes any sense. Once that liquid has reduced, all of the moisture from the white wine and the white wine vinegar evaporates, and what you're left with is a concentration of acidity. That's how you make a beurre blanc as well. But here I'm going to leave just a little bit more liquid. So now I'm going to add cold butter off the heat. What I'm doing here is creating what's called an emulsion. So this cold butter is going into this mixture with the acid, and it's going to emulsify. So it's the butter, it's the whey in the milk solids of the butter that create that emulsion. This is the technical stuff, right? Now you're wondering, what the heck does this have to do with risotto? You want to be a little patient. It's coming in towards the end. Okay, that is a perfect emulsification. Let me show you what this looks like. Look at that. Creamy. See that? Once I have my perfect emulsification, now I want to chill this overnight. I'm just going to put it in a small container, cover it, pop it in the fridge. I just put some chicken stock to come to a simmer behind me, and now it's part 2 of the risotto, the golden risotto, the rice. So I have a medium-sized pot here, like a saucepan, and I'm going to start toasting my rice. Again, I'm going to go in with just about 5 grams or so of butter over medium heat. This rice is Carnaroli. It's a short grain rice like arborio would be, but I think this is a far superior rice, in my opinion. It cooks differently. It takes a little bit longer to cook. To me, most chefs who make great quality risotto will use Carnaroli. So this phase, this part of the recipe, the toasting of the rice, does a couple of things. It really enrobes each grain of rice in a little bit of butter. It also brings out the nuttiness of this rice. While that rice is toasting, let me show you the first introduction to the golden part of the risotto. Check out this saffron. So saffron is really going to give this dish this beautiful golden hue and obviously make it very luxurious, very expensive. I want to keep my eye out on the rice here. You can see it smoking a little bit. I want it to toast, but I don't want it to burn. So this will take a couple of minutes maximum. It's looking very good now. It almost changes to be a golden color, even the rice. Okay, the rice is toasted. Now I'm going to add the other half of the white wine off the heat because it's going to be super hot. So you can see all of that moisture pretty much evaporated, right? So far, so good. It's looking pretty traditional, this risotto, right? Now, I'm going to add the broth, which I have already boiling behind me. You want to make sure that that broth is hot always. And just adding probably a quarter at a time. At this stage, I'm going to also add the saffron, probably a little bit more than you think that it's going to need. And I didn't give you a measurement for that because it is quite challenging, but I want to add a fair bit. I'm going to look at the color, really. It can get too soapy if you add too much. Now here's the thing. So my typical way of making risotto is I would be stirring this sucker constantly. Guess what? There is no stirring. I know. There's no stirring at this point. So the main thing I want to keep in mind, this Carnaroli rice, as I mentioned, cooks in about 16 to 17 minutes. And you want to be super precise. So I'm actually going to set a timer because I want it to be perfect. Now, the thing that's the same as making a traditional risotto, the way I've learned, is you do add the stock little by little, and you just swirl the pan as opposed to stirring with your spoon. So I can see that it has evaporated, so I'm going to add a little bit more, always hot stock. And then give it a swirl. If you feel the unsuppressed need right now to get a wooden spoon and stir this, I know, you're not alone. I also wanted to do that. But trust me when I tell you there's a very important step at the end which makes it all make sense. While this is continuing to cook, let's grate a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano. What this adds is that umami, that savory flavor, but it also surprisingly has a fair bit of acidity. That's what gives the balance. A good risotto needs that acidity to really heighten the flavor, because you can imagine this is basically starch. It's a blank canvas. So whatever you put on there is really going to shine, or it's going to be flat like a pancake. So this needs a day to chill, and what I did is I put it in a piece of parchment paper and just created a log. And here is the magic. I'm just chopping it up into little beautiful slices because this is going to go into my golden risotto just at the very end. Now, here is where the timing is very important, right? So I've got my risotto, which has about 5 minutes left. So I want to make sure I have all my mise en place ready to finish this dish because it has to be just the right texture. I haven't added salt yet, which they actually do towards the end. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow that technique. Look at the color. And it's good to just sort of taste as you're going because time is a fleeting thing, right? You don't know what side is your pot. How is your heat source? I mean, the time is just a guide. So let me see. I mean, I can see that this is still pretty much hard as a rock. Let me just do a test. It's pretty close, actually. So I'm going to start adding a little bit of salt now. The color is perfection. And really, if you look at this now, you're thinking, there's no way that's going to turn into a creamy risotto. Because that's what I thought when I was looking at it. This is not going to work. It's going to work. Trust me. The key here is to never let the liquid change temperature. That's why you keep it hot. Bear in mind that when you look at the recipe, whatever the amount is of liquid, it could be a little bit more. You want to make sure you have a bit more in case it needs it. At this point, the rice still has a little bit of a chew, but what I'm anticipating now is that 2 minutes that I'm going to stir in the rest or the butter. I'm going to just add a little bit more broth here in anticipation of the final texture I want. And I'm going to crank up my heat. This is where there's a little acrobatics, right? A little bit more salt also. Just a touch, but I know that the cheese is going to go in there, which is also salty, so I don't want to overdo it, right? To me, this recipe is such a great example of the evolution of cuisine. Obviously, this is a classic Italian recipe, and the whole planet knows about risotto. But a chef who got 3 Michelin stars decided that it needed a makeover. So he moved the needle. And it's not until he did it that everybody was okay with that license, because it's always the first person to make the change who gets slapped. It's just, why are you changing it? It's perfect. What's the matter with you? But then we're just always making the same recipe for like thousands of years. So that's what Chef Marchesi did. He wanted to move the needle. I think right now is that time when I can start adding my butter. All right, heat low. Now we stir. I'm gonna add a little bit of butter. Now it's the dance. It's got to be the perfect texture, the perfect creaminess, really going. You don't want it to be too loose, but you don't want it to be too thick. How about a bit more for good luck? Now I'm going to add just a little bit more butter. Come on, we're going for broke. And the cheese at the very, very end. Off the heat, cheese and butter in, stop everything for 2 minutes and pray. 2 minutes later. All right, check this out. I had to go with a very special plate for this because traditionally he serves it, the chef serves it on a black plate, which I don't have, but this is like a super golden, awesome plate that I thought would be great. Let's see if I achieved that wavy texture, okay? It's not supposed to be a big mound. And now the last very important thing to do is slam the bottom of that plate. And that is the ultimate golden risotto. I think Chef Marchesi would be super, super proud. That is such a spectacular looking and simple dish. And as I mentioned, what they do to finish it off is like a square gold leaf on top. I didn't have the gold, but it looks pretty golden to me. Let me have a taste. Look at that texture. These flavors, all that beautiful acidity, right coming from the sides of my mouth. The texture of the rice is so perfect. It should have a bit of a crunch. Flavor is so great. Simple. It feels like it's such an easy dish, but there's so many details to master. Thank you for joining me on another helping of my favorite foods. Please subscribe. Let me know what I can help you with. And I think you want to try this very controversial, I know you're going to have lots of things to tell me, way to make risotto. Please try it. Ciao.